Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about 5 books to understand the world. So I've been thinking recently about the books that I've read and how they've kind of shaped the way that I view the world, and I think these 5 books are the ones that have influenced me the most in the way that I think about things. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, I'm Alfred, and I like to make videos about things that I find interesting. So let's start with book number 1. So the first book that I'm going to recommend is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. So this is a book about the history of humans, and it's basically describing the differences between humans and other species and why we've seen humans do really well. So one of the key points that he makes in the book is that humans are able to understand fictions and stories, and this led to the cognitive revolution and also led to sort of widespread cooperation between humans, and that's led to the modern society. So, you know, if you want to answer the question, well, why does society exist in the first place, then Sapiens is a good book to start with. Another thing that I've benefited from reading this is just having sort of ballpark knowledge for the fact that, you know, human civilization has been around for about 10,000 years, and then humans as a species have been around for about 100,000 years. And this is, I don't know, just something that I've actually found interesting to know during, you know, when I've been thinking about things. So the second book sort of follows on from this, and the book is Dominion by Tom Holland. So Tom Holland is one of the presenters of The Rest is History, which is a good podcast. But Dominion is about how you can't really understand the history of Western civilization without taking into account the fact that it's a very Christian civilization. And sort of even ideas like science and, you know, modern sort of ways of thinking about things like humanism really have roots that are in Christianity. So the key takeaway from the book for me is that even though I'm not religious, the way that I think about things is shaped by Christianity because I've grown up in a Western civilization. What's discussed in the book isn't the idea that Christianity was necessary for the developments of civilization that have happened, but really it's more that Christianity existed whilst Western civilization was being developed, and the ideas that are, and because of that, it's impossible to sort of disentangle modern ways of thinking and modern ideas from Christianity. So that's a really good book. The third book is of kind of a different nature, and that's Educated by Tara Westover. Now this is a memoir, but it reads a lot like a work of fiction, and it's kind of a memoir of Tara Westover, who was brought up in a sort of extremely Mormon family, and then ended up sort of leaving, becoming sort of estranged, and going on to study a PhD and, you know, do things. So you get her kind of educated view looking back at her family, and it's kind of interesting for me because, you know, you realize that some people do really believe some crazy things, but not just that, you also get to see that, well, from their point of view, they think that the way that you think is crazy. And I think that's something that I, you know, have taken from that, is that, well, you know, and that's kind of, you know, fairly humbling in that for any, you know, you can think that you're really being very rational, but there'll be somebody out there who, because of their beliefs, thinks that your ideas, because of their way of thinking, their way of viewing the world, thinks that your ideas are completely nonsensical. And, you know, it's kind of interesting to really argue, like, well, who's right in that situation? Like, why? There's not necessarily an answer for that I'm definitely right in that situation. And I think that's interesting. And reading Educated allows you to, you know, see sort of firsthand that, well, these people do actually exist. The book number 4 is Factfulness by Hans Rosling. Now, the premise for this book is that the world is getting better, but somehow due to news and things that people read, the general perception is that the world's getting worse. But if you actually take a kind of, if you actually measure things and you say, well, has the quality of life improved for most people over the past 50 years or so? And the answer is a resounding yes. And so I think the key takeaway from this book is that, you can be quite easily swayed by things that you read, sort of news and things that are sort of overly focused on the negatives. Actually step back and look at things from sort of a different perspective and ask the right questions, then you can maybe get a more accurate answer for what's actually going on. And so, I think what I've taken from this book is that, you can be worried about things and you can think that things are bad. But it's good to actually think, well, is this pessimistic way of viewing things actually representative of what's going on? And Fatfulness is a really good book for highlighting some cases where that isn't the case. So the final book that I'm going to talk about is a book called Chip War by Chris Miller, and this book discusses the history and the geopolitics of the construction of microchips. So this is something that I hadn't really thought about before reading the book, which is that, we're expecting widespread change in the world due to increased use of computers and things. So because of that, the way in which we manufacture microchips is really important, and the history of it is fascinating as well. And so reading this book, you see how we've actually come to this situation where the world is dominated, or where one of the key things to consider when looking at the world is the manufacture of microchips. And so if you're looking forward at what's going to happen over the next 10 years or so, then computers and the production of microchips is going to play a really important role. And, there's kind of issues like Taiwan and very specialist facilities that exist in these places, and you have the geopolitics of China and things. And so looking forward over the next 10 years or so, microchips are going to play a really key role in geopolitics and sort of economics, the way that society develops. And so if you want to understand the world, then reading this book is a really good thing to do. So thanks for watching. I'm planning on making some other videos similar to this, where recommending books, so like books on AI and things like that. So if you're interested, then maybe consider subscribing. And also there was quite a lot of sort of honourable mentions that didn't quite make this list of the top 5. So I've made a list of books on my Goodreads, where you can see sort of all of my perspective changing books. So thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing.